Welcome everyone to this Let's Play of Kerbal Space Program version 1.0. Now with Jeb and Tamthy recovering in hospital, it is time for Val, Bill and Bob to come to the fore. And to do that, they are going to build a new orbital station for the iconic Symphonic Protonic Electronics Agency, to be precise. It is a facility that must support at least 8 Kerbals orbiting around Minmus. They will give us an advance of 138,000 funds, and on completion we will get 358,000 funds. So let's head over to the VAB and get cracking. Now, to complete this contract, we could of course send a single craft with capacity for 8 Kerbals, but we're not going to do that. We are going to use the colonization system by Umbra Space Industries, USI, and we're going to build ourselves an orbital space station. We're going to build it in parts, and the first part we are going to send will be the UKS Pioneer module. So let's get that into play. So this is a Pioneer module. It is orbital in nature. It has capacity for 2 Kerbals, and it also has storage for machinery, recyclables, organics and mulch, which is all part of USI's implementation of life support. So this is the main central core of our space station. So let's just double check what the other requirements were. It is to put the station in orbit. It must be a new station with an antenna, docking port and able to generate its own power. In other words, it must have solar panels or RTGs, something of that nature. And of course it must be a new station. It can't be one we already had. We know at some point it must have at least capacity for 8 Kerbals. It must have a research lab at the station, so we're going to have to add the research lab, and it must survive once it's been built for at least 10 seconds. So there's a couple of gotchas there. Things to remember is like the antenna will definitely have a docking port and solar panels, and the research lab element, that's also something that can be easily missed. So let's get cracking, shall we? So this is the basic part, and with that part we also have a number of basic accessories. Now the one I'm looking for at the moment is the module cap, and the module cap is quite handy for putting together a series of these modules in what look like a connected set. I mean, you can just clamp them together. So for example, we could go and get this fuel refinery, it's a rather large fuel refinery, and just, tack it on the back. But we're not going to do that. We're going to do it in sections. So this is going to be the wrong part. This is going to be the first section, and we're going to want to have some docking ports. Now the docking ports you can get with the Umbra Space Industries. So these rather nice inflatable style docking ports, which look rather neat and tidy, but you have to be very careful. They only go one way around. And this isn't it. This is this side to ship, rather handily placed. I have actually done it the wrong way round, and you can actually dock the wrong way round, but you'll end up with your docked ship inside your module. So if you find that happening, it's because you've put your module, your docking port module, on the wrong way around. You can see crew hatch is handily written on this side. So if you look, it's easy enough to see. Now, if this is going to be our central core module, I want to make sure it has pretty much one of everything. So the next thing we're going to put on, I think, is going to be one of the smaller docking ports, and I rather like putting them on these little extensions. And if you put the docking port, if we go Clampatron in the search window, if you put the Clampatron docking port straight on the top, it looks a bit, well, it looks a bit sort of handmade. Given it looks a bit handmade, what we're going to do is pop over and get one of these batteries and put the battery on first. And if you put the battery on first and then go and get your Clampotron, so let's go and get Clampotron docking port and pop that in. See, it just looks a little bit neater. So I kind of like that, and it also means you have a surface for attaching lights. So let's go for illuminators, and we have the little diddy ones, or we have the stock illuminators. Let's try some of these little diddy surface mounted spotlights. We'll have 4 of those around the edge like so, and then that'll give us a little sort of indication when we are coming into dock if it's in the dark. So that's sort of this part at the top. Next, I think we need to think about, we can think about antenna, we've got docking ports, and generating power. So generating power, let's go for some panels. In this case, we'll go with the Gigantor panels. We don't want 4 of those, we'll just have 2. 1 on either side. So let's just get that neatly, using the lines, neatly centered there on the sides. Now, we do actually have some battery storage. It doesn't show it, but we do actually have battery storage inside the module, so there's no need to add extra batteries. But what I will do is add some additional lights and solar panels, because I want to make sure that in the event these panels aren't pointing directly at the sun, we have 4 more additional panels just around the edge here, just to pick up a little bit of light, because I have found myself with panels end on and no battery power. Now you can use the Saviour battery, so perhaps we'll use the Saviour battery as well. I've just noticed the one little problem is I like the logo not to be obscured, so let's put these at the top here, and we will actually put a Saviour battery on as well, and we'll use this sort of handy space up here. You can see there's quite a bit of space in here to put some of those sorts of extras. So let's look for some life support, because we'll need some life support. We've got a life support mini pack, so we don't need 4 of those, so let's have just 2. We will rotate them the correct way, which is that away, and we'll just sneak that in there like so. I think what we'll do is we'll use the handy offset tool just to push them in just a little bit and pull them back down. There we go. So they fit neatly into that gap in there. And we'll use the same technique to place some Saviour batteries. And I've got my own little electrical drawer, so let's go and see if we can get a couple of, they're quite big, aren't they? So let's go for a couple of these tiny batteries, just 2 of those, 1 either side, and we'll use those as our Saviour batteries. So we'll have those fully charged but initially off, and then if we run out of power we will at least have symmetry. Symmetry will then disable both at the same time. I should have remembered that. So we have 2 batteries, 2 Saviour batteries there in at the top. Next, I think we need to just double check that we have an antenna. Now, we're not using remote tech, so having an antenna is not actually essential, but we will have an antenna. Where should we try cramming in this antenna? Should we have, where should we put an antenna? Just on the top here? We'll have just the one, because we only actually need 1 to fulfill the contract. But we could also have one of these larger comms DTS antennas just for a bit of fun. Just for a bit of fun, just so that we can say we have one. So we can imagine that is our transmitter back to Kerbin, and we can imagine this is our local transmitter, a bit of role play there. So we have our essentials, I think. we have life support, and life support contains oxygen, snacks, and water, so there's no need to add separate items for that. So what I'm going to put here, this is called the Colony Command Center, or Pioneer module, so we'll just call this the CCC Mark 1, because I'm sure we're going to have to come back to this when for some reason we've forgotten something. But we should have enough. I mean, I haven't put any science on here. It does actually contain a little science lab if you have a scientist who can just do some general number crunching. So we can do that as well. So I think that's probably the essentials for this module. Now, in the longer term, we're going to have to put some more Kerbals in here. So this will be one end. We'll have sort of a inflatable habitat module in here, habitat ring. We'll come onto that later, and so on. And then we'll just branch out as we need additional parts. So this is going to be our first launched part. We don't want it to be too heavy to begin with. So let's start cracking and actually launch it. Now, to do that, let's go here and find ourselves our stack decoupler, and that will attach quite nicely in there. Now, I think we're going to need the larger fuel tanks and rockets, so we will take ourselves our Rockamex brand decoupler, but not before we put in our scriptable control system. So let's attach that in there, and also let's make sure we have plenty of disk space. Increasing the disk space costs a little extra funds and increases the mass very slightly. So there is a penalty for increasing RAM storage. Now, what are we going to do next? Now, we should really think about bringing some of these parts home, but unfortunately we don't really have a particularly decent way of housing these Probodyne modules, because if you try putting them in here, they're the wrong size, and then you've got to worry about strapping it up. So what I've thought of doing is, if we go and get the service bay, is this a small service bay? This is a small service bay. What we can do is we can actually put it inside the service bay. So let's pop that in there like so. We can get a battery to go underneath it. Let's get one of the little batteries to go underneath it. And there we have a little probe bay. So that will now be nicely protected inside its probe bay. It doesn't look all horrible and strapped up and, well, horrible, basically. And that should be good to go. I think that works really well. Now, what we're going to do, I keep putting the adapter on and then having to take it off again, because we're also going to go to our aerodynamics module and look for our fairing base. We'll put that in there. That seems to enclose everything. It's a little bit tight on there, but it does seem to cover it. I'm just going to test it. So we get our egg-shaped fairings. I'm going to increase the number of... we've got 2 nodes at the moment, so let's add 4 nodes. I tend to have 4 nodes on each of these fairing bases. Pick up the egg-shaped fairing, just put it on the side here. Don't have to worry about it being the right way round. You do have to worry about having enough of them. And yep, it does seem to be properly enclosed, which is very good. So let's take that off. So that will enclose our device. That's fine. So let's now put that on. Let's go to Command and Control, get a reaction wheel, nice sizable reaction wheel. And now we can start building the launch section. Now, I don't want it to be too long, so let's use this Rockamex bay. This Rockamex tank. It's the Rockamex X200. And then let's get ourselves an engine. Now, we could use the Poodle, mainsail, or skipper. Now, with something this large, and this is going to be the sort of transfer stage, I want all of this to be fully fueled up when we are on our way to Minmus. And I don't know, that's really got the punch. 60, what do we got? We've got 250 max thrust in a vacuum, and that's got way more, 650. If we look at its details, we can see over here it has an engine ISP of 320. That's its efficiency number. Call it an efficiency number for want of a better description, whereas this has 350, so it's a little bit more efficient but has way less thrust. So let's go with the skipper. So this is going to be our transfer stage. Remember, we work backwards as far as getting ourselves to a destination goes. Now I'm just wondering, do we need any RCS? Now for this station, this part of the station isn't going to do any docking at all. It is simply going to be the core of our station. So what do you think? Should we? What the heck? If we're going to do a job, let's do it properly. So let's just park this out of the way. So this is our station. We're going to use the RCS build aid. Let's just get rid of the contracts for the moment. We're going to use the RCS build aid, which just gives us a little bit of a hand when building RCS based craft. Okay, so let's get some RCS fuel. That's under fuel tanks. We've got the single tanks, we've got the tiny round tanks, or we could use these tanks. I'm not sure whether, because what we could do is just pop this off, and which one is it? Is it this one? And put on this tank there. That kind of makes this a little bit more centered. It's a little more. So if you look at where the mass is, a little bit more in the center now. So yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Now, where are we going to mount? Where are we going to mount our RCS thrusters? Are they under control? They're under control. So let's go and get 4 RCS thrusters. Now you'll see the big red arrows that you can see now on our display, and those are telling us which way our craft would turn in the event we mounted our thrusters where we're about to mount them. So I really want to mount them in there, but I've got the batteries in the way. So let's take our sacrificial batteries off for the moment and squeeze this in here. I'm going to have to move the food out of the way as well. Let's get these mounted first. So let's get these in here like so. Now of course we've only got one set on, so if we attempt to translate to the right, so that's translating, you can see the blue arrows here demonstrating the direction of thrust, so it's going to be left as we were looking at there. So here we go, it's going to be right as we look at it now from this side. It's going to obviously turn because we've got no counter thrust down here at the bottom. So if we take another set of these and place them down here, you can see as we move them up and down, the red arrow gets larger and smaller to tell us exactly which way we would be thrusting. And if you look over here, you can see the torque number. There is still a tiny bit of torque causing us to turn. So as we drag it down, the torque number comes down until we can get it down to almost 0. What a bit, there we go. 0.03, can we get it any smaller than 0.03? 0.18, there we go, 0.018. So that will translate almost perfectly left to right, and I find that's probably as fine as you need to change it. Now you'll just about be able to see their little red, tiny little red mass or centre of mass. That's the dry centre of mass, and you can actually use the RCS build aid to change your reference point from centre of mass to dry centre of mass back to the centre of mass. So you can actually change which centre of mass the rotation is around. So if we emptied this, obviously there'd be very, very little RCS left. If we left just a dribble, it would actually rotate around the dry centre of mass, not the wet centre of mass. So do bear that in mind when using the RCS build aid if you are going to have a vehicle that will lose a lot of weight. But for us, that should be fine. So let's now put our various bits and pieces back in. So we're going to have to put these back in now. We only wanted 2, and notice the centre of mass now has moved slightly because we put in these bulky packs. So we might have to go back and just readjust the thrusters. So let's just push this in a little bit left and a little bit right. There we go. So that fits in quite nicely. Let's grab our battery and do the same with the battery. So we should have 2 sacrificial batteries in there now. Just check they are still sacrificial. Yes, they are. So you can see we now have moved the centre of mass up a little bit and our torque has increased. So let's just grab hold of the RCS. So let's make sure we have 4 of them and get that down as low as possible. So there we go, 0.14, there we go. Now it's got a slight... Have I put them on at an angle? Are they on at an angle? Because it seemed to be rotating very slightly. And now that might be because the centre of mass is now slightly offset because we don't have symmetrical weight around the vehicle. So in other words, the centre of mass is now very, very slightly not in the centre of our vehicle. So let us correct for that, because I am picky. So what we'll do is we will have 4 of these, and let's now get these in like so, and we'll have 4 sacrificial batteries down the base here. Upside down now, never mind. So they go upside down there. It is still very slightly weighted to one side. I can't believe it's the Communitron. Wow. Something in there is weighting it just very slightly off. But only very slightly. Only very slightly. So let us just readjust. And get this down as slight as possible. Now of course we've got all that weight up the top. We're not going to be able to fit them in. Should we go back to what we had? Let's go back to what we had then. Let's go back to what we had, since that was as good as any. So let's put those in there. Let's push those in a little. 1 and 2. And let's get our sacrificial batteries, of which we want only 2. Let's go to place or pick. Pick those off. Get those in like so. And let's just readjust as low as we can get. There we go. Oops, I've only got 2, so let's put the 4 back on. There we go, 0.17. There we go, let's save this before we have a disaster. So there will be very, very slight twist, but we will live with that. So let's get back to... we don't need RCS build aid now because we're not going to be turning this whole vehicle based on RCS. So this is going to be our transfer stage with the fairings on. We've got our probe core in there so we can return this vehicle. Let's make sure it has some way of keeping its batteries charged. So let's go and look. Oh, let's look for panels in my search window. Go for some panels and just put some panels around the edge here. That should do just fine. What we can also do, I've also the lads in the laboratories have been working really hard and have come up with some chute technology that will allow us to save our stages, also codenamed chute codename stage recovery. So we will use stage recovery to try and recover as much of this stage as possible. It will be empty, so hopefully 4 chutes should be enough to recover this stage. I'm wondering actually whether we need to have any panels to, because I saw when we put panels on the radiator panels, and I'm wondering whether we need to take any radiators to save ourselves from. We've got these small extendable panels which we could put on. Whereabouts would we put those on? We've got these small extendable panels, or I wonder if we can get the tiny panels. Do they fit underneath? No, they won't fit underneath. Do we really need them? I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll send up another module with some radiator panels on it, and we will hope the conduction between the modules is sufficient. If it's not, we'll soon find out, and we may have to do some ad hoc repairs. So, next we need to get our launch stage. Now, for this, I really like some orange tanks. So we go and get my favourite decouplers. So let's have a look for my favourite decouplers, my radial decouplers. We'll have 2 of those, and we'll see how much delta V we can manage with this. We want about 5,000 delta V to have plenty in hand. So let's have a look at how much delta V we will have with 2 orange tanks. And oh, they're not fitted right. They on right? Yep, they're on right. So we've got 2 orange tanks. We've got our usual asparagus staging. So let's get that pumped across to the centre, like so. So next we've got a choice of engines again, and this really determines how much delta V we're going to need. So let's get our staging sorted out, because staging is essential if it's going to calculate the delta V correctly. So our current stage is, there we go, 5,000 delta V already, and that's just on that one engine. Dear me. So let us see. That doesn't sound right. So let's get ourselves skippered up. Should we get ourselves skippered up? So let us put that in there like so. We now have wow. We now have 11 thrust to weight ratio of 11. Hooey. Maybe that is too powerful. What the heck? Powerful rockets. We like powerful rockets. So let's get ourselves some nose cones, make ourselves a little bit more aerodynamic. Let us get ourselves some struts, just to ensure that everything stays in one piece, like so. So that hopefully should hold those together. Just to help us on our ascent, I think we will have, I do like the AV-R8 winglets. I've said that before and I'll say it again. So let's get some winglets in there. Is that right? Are they on right? No, they're not on right. So let's move them one tick around. There we go. Is that better? Much better. Okay, so we want to try and save our orange tanks as well. So let's go and get some further chutes. I don't think these Mark 16 parachutes are really large enough to fit on the top, so we'll go with the radial mount parachutes again, and they're going to go in pairs because we are putting these orange tanks together in pairs. So let's put these around the side like so, all in pairs. We use 4. So we use 4 sets, 4 pairs. There we go. So we have 4 pairs. We also need some launch stabilizers, and then we just need to do a little bit of prep with our staging and our fairing, and then we can head off and see if this thing launches. That'll be fun. Fat chance. So let's get 2 launch stabilizers there. 2 launch stabilizers there. So that's that all sorted. Now we have our sets of stabilizers. So there's engines and stabilizers in this section. Now, I think these will be all of our parachutes to go with the separators there. Now, apparently, it's best to stage the parachutes with the engines, and it's also best to adjust their min pressure setting to about 0.5. So let's do that now with each set of parachutes. 0.49, that should be fine. So let's now go and do the next pair. 4.8. There we go, 4.9, that's close enough. And then next pair. 4.9. And then we'll go and rummage around the other side, and that should be all of them set. 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. That's close enough, and we'll just double check these ones. Oops! Control Z. Control Z time. Right, so let's just double check that these are all set as well. They should have been set in pairs, so they're not. So let's just set these as well, and then we'll triple check the others. So 4.9 I was setting them all to. Control Z may well have undone my good deeds. Or 9, and then the last one, which I think is on this far side. Having a little bit of a problem there with the remote camera in the VAB, so let's just see if we can finish this off. 4.9. And then let's just triple check the ones on the other orange tanks. Then we're going to have to send Bill and Bob in to check the remote cameras, because they seem to be having a bit of a problem maintaining the parachutes. We have got rather a lot. Let's just double check these ones. Yeah, they're set, but we haven't set the ones around that central tank for the return journey. Now these should all set together because they were put on as a set of 4, but we will check. So let's check this one as well. 4.9, yeah, so they're all set. So we just need now to get the egg-shaped fairing in place. Let's go to aerodynamics and my egg-shaped fairing. Let's get that in there like so. There we are. Fairing all in place, and I should have a set of 4, so that's that one. So we don't want them all going at the same time, so I'm going to stage those separately when the time comes. So this is the Colony Control Center Mark 1, and in the next episode we'll see if we can get this thing to Minmus. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.